Welcome back to the Daily Rundown with me, Dan Morfitt. So this is the part of the show where our guests can feel free to get something off their chests. It could be a rant, a call to arms, or a chance to praise something great in their lives at the moment. They are back for their something to say. Now, Madie, I know you're going to go second. So Ayesa, what is your something to say?
Well, I want to talk about something that a lot of people don't talk about, and that's intrauterine death. Now, it's a condition that happens in women at the time that they are 24 weeks pregnant or more. And the reason I'm speaking about it is because a friend of mine recently was having her first baby. She'd gone on her maternity leave. She was 35 weeks into her pregnancy, and it's a time when most people think, she was planning her baby shower when her baby died in the womb. And when this happened, obviously it's hugely devastating. But since it happened, other people started saying, well, actually, it's really quite common. It happened to me, or it happened to somebody they knew. I spoke to my brother. He said, oh, well, it's actually happened to two of my friends. It very nearly happened to my brother, in fact. My niece came very close to being stillborn. Now, everybody seems to know seems to be quite well aware of very early kind of pregnancy deaths. Early miscarriages, etc. But not many women are made aware that so late in their pregnancy could they possibly lose their child. And it's because it is such a sad thing. Most people that it happens to don't talk about it. They grieve. They try to get it over it. They try for another baby. If they're successful, they just talk about those children. But I wanted to talk about it just because it's something that I'd never heard of. I didn't know that people could be, that close to, to delivering and then just lose the baby. And it's because most people don't talk about it when it happens.
Is it preventable, or is it just an unlucky lottery of life?
It seems to be an unlucky thing. From what I've read, it's quite common. There are far more deaths at this stage, or stillbirths, than there are, say, for instance, early infant cot deaths. There was a couple of decades ago. There was a lot in the press about kind of early infant deaths and cot death. But this is not talked about, and this is far more common. There are a lot of, at the moment now, from what I've been reading, when this happens, people are encouraged to have an autopsy so that they can find out the reasons why this happened. But of course, most people don't want to do that. My friend doesn't want to do that. She's having a funeral. It almost
seems an intrusion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Too far.
And this beautiful child that they eventually deliver, it is born, but it dies. They don't want anybody to touch that. They want it, they want to protect that baby. They still consider it a baby. Well, of course, it is their baby, so they don't want any harm to come to that child. And I've learned that there are, designated baby burial grounds, which I wasn't aware of, because this is where she's now having her baby.
They can be more private as opposed to, open cemeteries.
Exactly. But it's just something that most people aren't aware of. She wasn't aware of it. She was saying that, people should say to people, I mean, she's in her 30s, she's 35, and from what I've been reading, the older a woman gets, the more likely, or the higher the risk that there is for this kind of thing to happen. And
but it's not a hard and fast statistic. It could happen to anyone.
It could happen to anyone. There's plenty of causes. Apparently, there could be problems with the placenta in terms of the oxygen that the baby gets. The thing that I found so amazing was the week before it happened, she had an appointment with the midwife. The baby's heart pumping beautifully. She'd felt movement a couple of days after that, and then I think 3 or 4 days after the last, and I remember her saying, "Oh, I felt this massive kick." And then a couple of days later, she noticed that she hadn't felt anything. So she called emergency services, when the emergency services did the scan, there was no heartbeat. And so it can happen so quickly. And this was one of the things she was saying, well, you know, if they know that older women, that this can happen more frequently with older women, if they know that, you know, if the baby is growing a little bit too quickly or it seems to be a little bit too big, why are they not more closely monitored? Or why is there no awareness of this? Why don't, you know, most women, when they come to deliver, quite often think, okay, you know, they'll get their little bag and everything that they've prepared, and they'll go off to deliver, only to find that they have a stillbirth. And a lot of it is because then a lot of them aren't taught to just keep monitoring themselves and be aware of, you know, changes in the body or things that don't seem to be happening.
I think it's one of those awful things that we think, you know, having a baby is an infallible process. So many people die through childbirth still, and it's not really recorded. I've got close personal experience of both the stillbirth and an ectopic pregnancy, and I don't think that there's the facilities within not only the NHS but in the wider society where we can talk about this. So I think it's good that we're talking about it tonight.
That's the thing. We don't talk about it, and I'm amazed at how many people it happens to. I was talking about this again at work today. Somebody else was saying, oh, you know, so and so and so and so, they all got pregnant together, and then so and so lost theirs, theirs died. Nobody ever talks about it, and you just are not aware. And I know you can understand why they don't, but it means because people don't. Again, people are not aware. You just think, okay, it's going to work. Since this has happened, my friend has met so many people who suddenly say, you tell them, and they'll say they've got a story.
It's a lot more common, and you know, even talking on the Daily Rundown right now, hopefully that will start a conversation in some people's houses tonight. Madie, what is your something to say?
Mine is about something that I discovered recently, which I found very shocking. It's the fact that every year for the past 16 years has been the hottest year on record. Records began in this particular case in the 1800s. So every single year we can predict that the next year will be the hottest year ever on record. And yet climate change denial is still mainstream in the media. Only recently did Sarah Palin mock it. I know that's, you know, in the US, and it's Sarah Palin, who also said, I'm as much of a scientist as Bill Nye. Just completely
Bill
unfounded
Nye, the
claim.
science guy.
Bill Nye, the science guy, as he is titled. But also in the UK, you know, not enough is done. It was only 2007 that the Climate Change Act came into force. Obviously, it was under Labour. And recently, December 2015, there was the Paris Summit. And all the world leaders, you know, 155 countries and counting, are pledging to move towards decarbonisation by 2050. And I've been really intently following it, and it is so integral that not only do we really pressure the government to make greener laws a reality, but that we try and reduce the CO2 emissions in our daily lives. You know, reduction is important because even though finding alternative, you know, clean energy, that is obviously a great thing, it's better than ignoring it, but energy will still be used, and really there should be a third way, which is that you reduce your CO2 emissions, you recycle more. All of these things that we sort of take for granted. You know, you obviously know you're meant to recycle, you don't think about why. Global warming is becoming a reality and it's affecting us.
As one world, one planet, we should be reducing our carbon footprint as individuals. But what's the point of us reducing it if developing nations like India, China, Brazil start burning more fossil fuels because they want the industrialisation that we've already had for 200 years?
Yeah, well, they've agreed
China's
to sign up to the
big.
Paris Summit. It is a big country.
Big country.
But they've agreed to sign up to it. And the thing is, it's actually quite lucky now with the internet and with social media. It is amazing what pressure that puts onto countries. And I'm convinced that it will be a case of reputation. And as soon as it is seen to become a credible, cool or necessary thing to do, to take climate change seriously, you know, as businesses, and if you start putting awards on that, then people will start acting.
I think one of the words that you use there is very paramount. Cool. I remember when I was a kid at school, we all learned about the Yanomami tribe in the rainforest. We learned about CFCs from fridges and aerosols. Sting went on Wogan with a bloke with a plate in his mouth and just went, "We're killing everything."
I can't remember that one.
It happened.
Yeah,
Otherwise, I
okay.
had a very strange childhood. And then we went to Kyoto and had the Kyoto Accord. And then it seemed to disappear. Environmentalism wasn't cool anymore. We weren't thinking about solar panels. We weren't thinking about wave energy. We were thinking about how much we're paying in taxes.
The thing about solar panels and things like that is oftentimes I think it's used as a statement, sort of by, you know, big corporations, for example, saying, "Oh yeah, we've done a bit for climate change, we have a solar panel, okay,
Tick.
moving on." Yeah.
Tick.
And the impact is so real. As I said earlier, the Earth is wobbling on its axis. Should not be happening. We live on Earth.
I think if there were far more natural disasters. I mean, the thing is that
There are.
human
We've just
beings,
had earthquakes.
Yeah,
in
we've
China.
just had,
Increasing.
but it didn't happen to us. You know, and like you was talking about the Chinese, it didn't happen in China. You know, my father comes from Sierra Leone. And their capital city is Freetown. They had beautiful forest, and there's so much deforestation in Freetown, and it's kind of like very kind of cliff-like the city. Because of the deforestation, great boulders are just falling, you know, from the mountains down and killing people.
But it's
You
happened
know.
here. We've had a lot of the flooding, basically, because we haven't looked after the land properly.
Absolutely, and
It's-
I think you see the thing is with human beings, it just seems to me that unless we're really pushed, you know, our arms are twisted, we will ignore and ignore and ignore until something comes and really makes us move. And I think, you know, it's not about the cool thing. If we were going to rely on it being cool,
That's more for businesses
Yeah,
and
I
things
think
like
if we have to rely on something like that, we will find change happens very slowly. It's the disasters that generally frighten people enough to start acting. I think.
I think on all the statistics that we've said tonight, Madie, yours is probably the one that is definite. It's got to be another hottest summer and hottest year on record. Thank you for your something to say. Does everybody feel like a weight's been lifted?
I feel revved up.
Revved up, that's a good thing to be, because after the break we'll be looking at some of the less serious stories of the day. So stick around for the last bit of the Daily Rundown next.